Okay. All right, let's call the governance committee meeting to order on February 5th at 3:38. Miss Vaughn, can you do the roll call and everyone who is not a voting member, introduce yourself.
Ms. Foster,
Present.
Dr. Collins Adams, Ms. Hubbard,
Here.
we have a quorum.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Kim Dutch. I'm General Counsel of St. Louis Public Schools.
Welcome to
Good
everyone.
afternoon. Good afternoon, Allison Dino, Chief of Schools.
And I'm Erin Kane, Director of Partnerships and Grants for the district.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, the next thing we need to do is approve the minutes from our December meeting.
I make a motion to approve our December 4th, 2025 governance committee minutes.
Second.
Ms. Foster,
Yes.
Ms. Hubbard,
Yes.
motion approved.
Right. And then I believe Ms. Kane is going to talk to us.
Yes. And Tiffany, do you have the presentation, or do I have the ability to share my screen?
You have the ability.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Slideshow. All right. So, as you all know, I am the Director of Grants and Partnership for the district. So I oversee all of those processes and have kind of identified a few ways that we could work more efficient as a district and really fast track some of the services being approved without taking away from any of the oversights. So and get into it. So one of the things that I would like to talk about is the grant application being approved by the board. Because the philanthropic landscape right now is so tight. A lot of grants that are posted, it's 60 days or less. So we won't always have the opportunity when a grant arises to take it in front of the board. I would like to propose that there is a staggered approach, and this is just for the grant application. Any awarded grant would still be coming through the board for acceptance of funds, but this is for making sure that we have alignment in terms of finance, HR, the program itself, leadership. So it's really tiered out based off of the level of the grant. So the amount that we're asking for, and we've also tried to correlate it to a multi-year grant. So like most grants at 50,000 and up, those are multi-year. So we want to make sure that we are running it through the superintendent. Those would be larger grants, whereas grants up to 10,000, those could be for a classroom or a micro grant. And those are typically wrapped up within a year or so. Now, one of the things that I also wanted to talk about lifting is the match requirement. So a lot of federal grants do require match, just so that we can show that we are leveraging all of the funds in the right direction. So match is an important part of grant writing. And so when it is required, adding in this step of who is approving it, because again, it could be a multi-year grant, but we want to make sure that we are pulling in all of the right players, all of the right stakeholders, and really aligning it to the district's goals and missions. And so everything is still working us towards where we want to go. And as you can see, I put in a few examples for like private grants, large classrooms, corporations, and the staggered approval as well. So when I talk about the approval checklist at that level, we would be ensuring that all of the information being shared is accurate, that we have a correct depiction of the need and the tone, so that we are preserving the dignity of the district and our families, that no individual student data is shared, that we inform accounting, which is always very important, that we receive program or district school approval if it's school-based, similarly academic or student support services, that everybody is looped in, ensuring that it's a reasonable ask so that we stay competitive in this market, and that if additional funds are needed, so if it's a grant to partially cover a project, that we have existing funds to make sure that we can cover what we say we are going to. Other things that would be included would be a media plan, ensuring that the timeline works for us. So if the grant reporting structure is not in line with our board approval for acceptance of funds, these are things that we would discover in this internal approval phase before we even apply for the grant. So this is really just kind of an overview of everything of how it could flow. So like somebody within SLPS identifies a grant, then they would notify their principal, get approval, then the network, and it just works up the, oops, sorry, one moment. It works up the chain of command. So once it gets to grants and partnerships, then we review the application, amend it if needed, work with the individual that's wanting the grant to make sure that we follow all of those steps, include finance, HR if it's needed, and we pull everybody to the table so that we have consensus before we apply. So if it is funded at 5,000 or above, it would go in front of the board for board approval. So I'm gonna pause there and see if there's any questions before I go on to the next section.
Yeah, Erin, I had a question. I'm curious, or maybe not a question, I'm just curious, or can you explain a little bit more the logic behind the hierarchy chart for approval of grants? I think this is in the earlier slides.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
So the executive director of comms, I think,
Yes.
yeah, talk to me a little bit more about row 1 and row 2 and like how you're thinking about that.
Yeah, so you know, once you get into 10 or 25,000, that might include FF&E like furniture, technology. It's going to probably be more of a long-term investment, so it might be something that's going to require a little bit more in terms of either commitment from the district or buildings and grounds. It's going to involve more people typically. So that top level is really the micro grants. It's focusing on, you know, hey, we need 5,000 for a field trip, or we need, we got a grant for 3,000 to provide arts and crafts supplies or something along those lines. Whereas the 10 to 25, those are a little bit more rare. And they would be coming from like private foundations. They're going to have different reporting structures, a little bit more effort in terms of grant reporting.
Okay, and that makes sense. I guess what I'm curious about is what's the thinking behind these specific roles as the approvers? Because I mean, as a regular plain, I read this and I'm like, well, why wouldn't the director of grants / partnerships approve and manage our higher end grants? Like, I don't see where the executive director of communications kind of fits in
Yeah.
that, but maybe I'm just like ignorant. So, like, please.
No. And it's really to kind of build that consensus across the system. So when we get into a $25,000 grant, let me also clarify, the executive director of communications is my direct supervisor. So it's kind of working up the chain. So when we get to that level, especially for corporations or private foundations, typically they would like, if it's, you know, adding a resource closet, there might be a ribbon cutting, there might be media. So that's one of the reasons why they get involved at that level. It's not necessarily something we would do for like a $4,000 grant. And then at the higher levels, those are typically going to be multi-year or deeper investment into our district, which just requires a little bit more oversight.
Another thing.
Can't hear you.
Another thing to think about as we go through this process is that with higher level grants and higher monetary value grants, at some points there will be more complicated terms and conditions that will need to be flagged and reviewed by legal counsel, and legal counsel looped in, so myself or anybody else on my team. So I think it makes sense to have a diversification and sort of a higher level of individual who's able to spot when legal counsel needs to be brought in on these higher level grants with more complicated terms and conditions that would bind the district to compliance obligations.
And so, Kim, I'm curious, at what level do you think that engagement should start? Because
I don't have any recommendation that would go against what you're seeing here. I just think that in adding as a reason as to why you would see somebody higher than a director level, or someone who is aware of sort of some of the risks associated with terms and conditions and can spot those issues of when to loop in legal counsel. So I was just adding a point to Erin's statements about why it's a great idea to have somebody in that reporting chain who also sits on cabinet involved in the approval of those grants.
Yeah, and let me clarify. I think what I wasn't understanding is like the executive director is your direct supervisor, Erin.
Correct.
And so I'm trying to figure out where that connection is, like why these specific roles in this order.
Yeah.
But I think like we all make, or you all are making a great point. And I'm curious if, to Kim's point about including legal counsel, if that is included in any of like the approval checklists or plans that you all are considering there.
Yeah, so it definitely depends on what the grant is. If it's, hey, we need school supplies and we're going for a $1,500 grant. We don't always run those by legal, but whenever it is the higher levels, like especially the federals, so when we talk about 6 figures or higher, we always pull legal in so that we can have those conversations ahead of time.
And I will say too, this is part of a greater conversation that the district, I believe, plans to have as new legal counsel comes on, is taking a look at our contracting process, which would include grants, and trying to make more uniform the types of agreements that we are signing, and trying to make it when at all possible, that we are using our own paper and our own standard terms and conditions. But obviously with grants, it's a little bit different. But there will obviously be a process regarding grants that will fit into that larger contract process work that we're hoping to do.
Okay.
Great.
Did we answer all of the questions? Okay, perfect. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about the fundraising guidance that was approved at the November board meeting. On your screen, it's just a refresher of kind of what was passed with the new policy. And this is wonderful, and we just kind of wanted to put together a procedure in order to really lean into this. So, that would be having a school fundraising plan. This is a simple document that would outline who are you asking the money for? What is the timeline? Is media going to be involved? What are the funds being used for? All of these important questions, so that not only my department, but also finance, communications, everybody has a copy and we know what's coming down the pike. So this is just, again, to bring us all into alignment and to have us working more efficiently so that there's no surprises.
I'm used to doing this on my computer, but then it doesn't work on my computer. So one of the things we also should be thinking about as we Not sure why I'm getting some feedback here. If you guys are going to do.
I think you need to just mute one of the devices.
Hopefully this, no. But as we are going through and develop more policy, we can start to think about also processes to include in this school fundraising plan, how to identify any ethical conflicts or ethical issues or legal issues that may come up in accepting a donation from a given source. So I think that, you know, these procedures are also really great and can be built upon if the board chooses to bring for a review of a policy of a code of ethics or some other policy that would have to do with monitoring who we are doing business with, even when we are accepting funds, so that we don't put the district in any weird position with any of our other grant terms or conditions or legal responsibilities.
Yes, and thank you for that, Kim. I also want to clarify that the school fundraising plan, this will help align our efforts with the foundation. So we can ensure that the schools are not per se going to a large corporation that happens to be funding the foundation at 4 or 5 figure gift, and the school's asking for $500 or $1,000, and we're undercutting ourselves. So it's really to build consistency and alignment across the system, and that way we can also just make sure that we're all rowing the boat together at the same time to get to where we need to go. And then finally, I wanted to pause and see if you guys had any questions on the fundraising plan. Okay. So my final point that I would like to talk about is MOUs. So right now, with our approval process, it takes roughly 4 months to get from submitting the RFQ to board approval. And as we all know, our community partners are providing a wealth of services to our students. And so I was hoping to talk about a way that we can expedite this, but without cutting off any of the oversight or evaluation of the partner. So right now, on your screen, I have laid out what the current process is. So we have the RFQ, the initial meeting, then we pull in principals and program leaders and wait for their feedback. Then my department will draft up the MOU and send it to our partners to go through their internal process. Then we get it back, goes to legal, which we already have a template created through legal. So it's just kind of that final double check. And then we enter it into a bar, and then we enter it into diligent, and then it goes to the work session, and then the board meeting, and then we get it signed, sent, and we ensure that background checks are done. So it's a pretty long process. Now, one of the ways that we could look at making it more efficient would be to keep all of the review pieces, the internal review, but we could look at possibly moving it to items for action for approval for the work session or board meeting to cut down on the time. So it would take us then to roughly 60 to 30 days for approval, depending on when we get the signed copies. This would help expedite as well for any acceptance of funds. It's very hard for funders to hear that, we appreciate your gift, we thank you, and we have to wait, 2 or 3 months to have that signed document back. So if we could possibly have that considered for items for action, that would really help ensuring that our students are getting the resources in a quick amount of time.
He laughed at that. Yeah.
And that's all I have. So if you have any questions on that final MOU part, I'm happy to answer them.
Another thing I'd like to add for Aaron, an idea for the board to consider and deliberate upon is just switching the order of the bar, and making the bar a group action item for all MOUs to be approved by the board to enter into that you would grant authority to enter into the MOU for all of these providers after legal review and district process, so that it would put the board approval not as the last step, but almost as a middle step. And it would also utilize the existing templated structure. So if the board approved, in theory, of the templated MOU structure in terms and conditions attached to that MOU, then they would have a great idea of the type of things that would be in all of these agreements and not necessarily need a separate action item for every MOU that comes across. Just something to consider and something that you can see that other districts do across the nation.
Well, I have a big goal, so Fred, pick up tomorrow. What I don't think.
Aaron, I think you have some background noise. Just so I'm clear. So we're saying one of the biggest changes is listing this as an item for action at the work sessions, or I'm guess I'm getting confused on the how is it getting cut down because the steps kind of look the same.
Yeah, so the recommendation would be to have them as items for action at work sessions or board meetings so that they wouldn't have to kind of, because for the community partners perspective, it's kind of this hurry up and wait of like, oh, we need it by like October 31st, and then you won't hear back from us until early January. So like it felt very much like okay, just like working through the process instead of possibly moving that a little bit faster.
So right now, are the 60 and 30 days required? I am just real confused on, I think this is similar to AJ's question, but I just still don't understand it.
Yeah,
doesn't make sense that it would take that long.
yeah, it takes quite some time, just because we have such a pretty big approval process, which isn't a bad thing. So right now it does take about 4 months to get from start to finish. So like I'm working on MOUs now that would be going to the board in April. And that's just because I have to submit it a few weeks before the work session, even to be considered for items for consent. So if we can do items for action where it could be voted on during a board meeting or a work session, that would just help expedite it.
And I do really like Ms. Dutch's suggestion,
Mhm.
that we could just be like, we automatically approve the things that fit in this box. That would be so much better for you. Because when you say your department, it's 2 people, right?
Yes, it's me and Shantae.
Okay.
And I think you're getting exactly at the point, which is, the resourcing to get these things approved is pretty slim for a pretty high volume. So we have to create economies of scale on all sides of this, I think. And this isn't legal advice. This is just something for the board to consider, that creating economies of scale by having one action item after all of those awards. So in February, all of these MOU awards come in. And at the end of February, we put them on a bar and say the board grants authority to the district to enter into MOUs with all of these providers, because they're no-cost services, right? And then hopefully the program offices have already started that MOU process, adding in COIs, getting it as ready as it possibly can be, so that then it is reviewed by legal, by finance, by tech, by whoever else needs to review it in the legal in the process to get it approved. And then it goes to negotiation and then execution, and the execution process, the signature process. But after the board grants authority in that block action item for 1 month, and you do it every month, then you have no involvement left with that particular MOU. It's just assumed that it is executed or that the negotiations fell through if there is no MOU at the end of the contract.
And to just dovetail with what Kim said, to give you a understanding of the scope of the community partner program, we had nearly 200 organizations submit for MOUs this year. So that is a lot to kind of meet with and manage. And if we could reduce that approval process, it would free up time for us to do other work as well.
I think you need to look at streamlining the entire process. 4 months is 4 months too long. I know I haven't been on the back end of submitting an MOU for a university when I was there to be able to have to wait so long to have it actually signed. Sorry for the dog, guys. So we need to look at the entire process and figure out a way to streamline all of this. It's entirely too long. And it makes it look as though the community is not connected to the school district because we're taking so long to do things. So I think that's something that Dr. Berry and our internal group need to look at and then be able to present all that to the board, how we're going to streamline this. But 4 months is too long.
Yeah, I think this process has reduced trust in the district. And it looks like the district doesn't trust people, which is not true. But perception is not reality, but it directs people's reality. So this sounds great. Do you need anything else from us as the governance committee?
I don't think so. So I can work with Charles and Dr. Berry and Dr. Henning to look at different, and Kim Dutch, to look at different ways that we can pare this down to make it more effective and efficient. And I think that would be very welcomed from our community as well.
That sounds great.
What kind of, Aaron, to that point, what kind of timeline do you think realistically y'all could work on that, like work that on?
I would be happy to get something to you all probably realistically, maybe by the work session. I can't really speak for anybody else's calendar, but you know, after being in this seat for 2 years, I know how much frustration this process has caused for organizations. And I know if we can get it resolved before we start renewing for next year, organizations would be very happy.
Yes.
Great. Okay.
Sounds good.
And just just so you understand, once this board suggests something and acknowledges that we need to change a process, we do follow up and follow through on it, okay?
Okay, wonderful. Thank you all very much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you. And thank you for all the time you've had to put in to get our kids services that benefit them.
Happy to do it.
So we have done grants and partnerships. And the next thing on the list is policy updates and reviews. And the first is policy IGAB, instructional interventions, which is also known as reading success plans. And take it away, Dr. Dino.
Certainly. Did you all get a chance to take a look at the policy, or do you want me to put it up on the screen?
Can you share it on the screen too, just
Yes.
in case? Yeah, thanks.
Sure thing. It'll take me just a minute, I'm sorry. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so This particular policy, this is the MSBA model policy. In several years ago, the legislature required that school districts adopt a policy about reading improvement to support the reading success plans. SLPS has not adopted that policy. So kind of like when we came to you with the cell phone policy this summer, and we had to adopt the cell phone policy because the legislature made a requirement that we adopt a cell phone policy. The legislature made a requirement that the school district adopt a policy related to reading success plans. And so this is the MSBA model policy that meets all of the letter of the law as it was at that point in time. It has not changed. I do know that the governor has directed the State Board of Education to do some things, so if things changed later, but right now this is where we're at. It has been an area that has been identified for us a couple of times by DESE as needing to act on. And the first time it came to my attention was when we were doing those slates of policy adoptions. Remember, we did the finance policies, and then there was the review of the human resource policies. And then these were going to be in kind of the next batch of policies. But we have not yet gotten to that next batch of policies. So we were going to include that then. But we're asking you to consider it now as a standalone, just so that we can become in compliance with what the legislature is asking us to do. I want to be really clear. We have always done reading success plans. We have always given the appropriate assessments to kids. We have always had the formats. We've always done all of the work that is in this particular policy. We just haven't actually had the policy yet. Questions, comments, thoughts?
Quick point of clarity for the board also on MSBA policies. Obviously, those are policies that have been recommended by the Missouri State Bar School Board Association, and they are recommended, but the board is under no obligation to accept the policy as written or as in whole. So as you consider the policy, please keep that in mind.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh, I was talking to myself. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Do we offer the in-service training on dyslexia?
Yep, it's required every year. We have to provide teachers with 2 hours worth of training. And we last year we did it in February. This year we did it at the start of the school year, and then we had several follow-ups throughout the month of September.
I do remember that change being made towards the beginning of the school year. I'm wondering, and maybe Ms. Duchess is a question for you, also posing this to the entire committee for thoughts. The last or the second to last paragraph in the dyslexia and related disorders section, it's one of the last sentences that says, however, the district may use the information to provide additional classroom support. Thoughts on vibes, feelings, legality to say like, however, the district will use the information, like changing it from passive.
So I see that as saying students can either be like referred for special education, or we could be doing other things, that we're not pigeonholing ourselves to say when we have one piece of information about us, any student, one piece of data, we're going to always do the same thing. I think you have to look at more than one data point. But I see your point. I'm just sharing that's how I read that particular
No, that's helpful.
sentence.
That's
Yeah.
helpful. Anybody else?
No, and just for.
Oh no, did we lose her? Oh no.
No,
she's there. Okay.
just for a point of clarity, I am unable to give legal advice at a public meeting. as that can waive the legal privilege. So I can guarantee that I will be involved in the review of the policy and provide legal input as it is developed and as we receive board feedback.
Mhm.
I can definitely listen to your concerns and answer your questions in a privileged setting.
Okay. I mean, we approve and move this, it's gonna go to the board for full approval anyway, so that can probably happen in the in between. I hear you loud and clear.
Yes.
Sweet. We ready for a motion? Or Casey, you got anything to add?
Actually, no, thank you.
Great, let's have a motion. I move to approve. Oh, where did it go? Policy IGAB, instructional interventions, otherwise known as reading plans. And to bring it to the whole board. Is that a good motion, Tiffany?
Second?
Is there a second?
Yes, second.
Okay. Any discussion?
No.
Okay.
All in favor? Please.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved.
Great. Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.
All right, thank you so much. Okay. The next thing is the 4.2, the public comment policy. And it needs to be updated to reflect new language that we've agreed to. And y'all have had the opportunity to look at it. So I make a motion to approve 4.2 public comment policy.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Do we need to look at it? I don't have.
No, I don't have any.
Okay, great. Let's vote again.
All in favor, show of hands.
Aye.
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 Approved.
And then 4.3, I don't think it exists. Or it is not a policy, maybe it is in the handbook, but we've seen a lot of discussions about student voice and student protests and what the district's role is in that. And how we can support our students and also, keep in the bounds of what we actually can do. I think, Tiffany, you said you had found some policies, and the suburbs are doing different things than other areas. So I just like to open the floor for discussion on this. I don't need a motion. I just want to know what y'all think.
So, if I may, Tiffany, I know that you and I have been speaking about this policy, and obviously we are aware of the great legal implications to the very important First Amendment having to do with this policy. And so we want to make sure that we take our time, that we get it right, but still stay on track. And I hope to, I think the district is hoping to do a survey of local districts, national districts, and the PSBA model policy that has burgeoned into a draft of that policy so far that we are going to make sure that we vet and get stakeholder input on internally before we bring it before the board. But we are moving along and making sure that we understand the menu of options that districts may take legally regarding this topic, and hopefully find one and synthesize one for SLPS that reflects the desires of the board.
And we've also renewed our membership with the Council of Great City Schools. They also have a stand on all of this. And so we can rely on some of their advice, research, and literature. So.
And I can expect as well that, it will follow First Amendment law in that there are exceptions to First Amendment speak, and there are limits that the district may put onto First Amendment speech to ensure, not ensure, but to promote safety and the orderly administration of education. And that is the gist of where the policy goes, and where the board wants to drive the line is up for your deliberation when we synthesize our first draft for you.
Okay, that sounds great. I have 4 student stakeholders in my house who have been asking about this. And I know that we had started working on it, but I wanted to make sure that it was on the agenda as something that we are officially working on. And I'm really glad to hear that. And thank you for your work on it. Okay. Any other discussion about that?
No, I think we just need to come up with a timeline. We don't have to do that right now, but we can come up with that timeline real soon, because that issue's getting closer and closer to what's happening around our country and what's happening in our school. So
The next governance committee is next month,
Yes.
definitely by the next governance committee.
thank you. Thank you, Board Member Foster, for asking the question. We've been chatting.
All right. So that concludes policy updates and review. And the next item is board norms. We have had the same board norms since 2019. And I have redrafted some norms. And I think you all have looked at them. But we can, as a governance committee, adopt them or edit them and then send them onto the full board for adoption. And Tiffany, can you share the screen with the new one?
Give me 1 second.
Dog's gonna get dizzy chasing her tail.
Hold on, I'm trying to see. Wait a minute. Share some of my pictures that I had. I've been working on a lot of stuff today. Sorry, guys. 1 second.
It's okay.
Here we go. Why is it not working? Here, can you see my screen?
Mhm.
Is this large enough for you all?
Yes,
Okay,
or it is for me.
all right.
Okay. Um, I don't have much to say about them except that we do have some updated language with I think with safety, especially ethical conduct, community trust, goodwill, and I think some lower down. Some of it is a little bit more specific. But we added especially like being a board member on the internet, social media type stuff. So if y'all think it's great, we will send it. We can vote to send it to the whole board. If you'd like to make changes, that's great as well.
I think it addresses what we had talked about previously, so I'm good.
All right. AJ, is it?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
It's great.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we've reviewed this like
A couple times.
for, yeah, some weeks on
Right.
it. So, excited to finally update them
Yeah.
and start honoring
I don't know
them.
if we still need to make Brian read through them, but
Mhm.
we could do selected ones, just rotate through. Okay, well, may I have a motion?
I make a motion to accept the 2025 drafted, adopted, St. Louis Public Schools Board of Education norms and recommend they go to the full board.
Second.
All in favor, show of hands,
Aye.
motion approved.
Great. And then the next item on the agenda is Safe Schools Resolution, which we passed last February. And in these times, the need to reiterate it and bring it up from the basement is here again. So I am just going to read it out, and if I can find my paper.
Would you like me to share as well?
Yeah, that would be good. Whereas St. Louis Public Schools has a responsibility to ensure that all students who reside in its boundaries can safely access a free public education in accordance with the United States Supreme Court decisions in Lyler versus Doe. And whereas the Board of Education recognizes that the denial of admission to school or participation in any district program based on a student's undocumented status is a violation of the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. And whereas the Board of Education further recognizes that undocumented students and their student records are also protected under the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, and that this law applies to St. Louis Public Schools. And whereas the Board of Education, by adopting this resolution, intends to affirm its commitment to a safe and supportive school environment for all students, regardless of immigration status. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Education of the City of St. Louis as follows. All requests made of SLPS by officials seeking to perform immigration enforcement activities on SLPS property shall be processed through the superintendent or the superintendent's designee to ensure compliance with the law. Schools shall not permit such officials to access students at school without having first contacted and processed the request and all relevant documentation through the office of the superintendent. SLPS staff shall treat all students in an equitable manner and provide equal protection under the law without regard for race, ethnicity, immigration status, or national origin. Resolved this third day of February 2025. So it really was almost exactly a year ago. And so I guess I would like a motion to recommend to the board that we just, I had the word that I wanted to say. Maybe that we either reaffirm this resolution or, just say it again publicly that we care about this, that we have cared about this, and that we have process and procedures in place. When's our next meeting? On the 10th. Does that sound good?
I think one thing, like since this is a like item for information, I think one thing is like before we do that, can we confidently say that those processes, plans, and procedures are in place and that those policies are publicly available on our website, within the handbook, etc. I can't confidently say yes right now. I wish we had Dr. Berry on the call because she might the answer, but Um, yeah, that's just one thing I'm thinking about. Like,
Yeah.
we can reaffirm it and we can, you know, make an announcement, but we need teachers and like school-based staff to also know that this is in their policy. If it is a policy, and if it isn't, then that's a bigger or a larger conversation. But curious.
Ms. Dutch?
What I can say is that I am aware that schools are aware of the policy and the procedures and have I guess wondered whether there are additional ways to make this more publicly accessible and wide known. I think that the administration is going to be thinking about ways to do that moving forward, given the climate with immigration and customs enforcement in large urban centers.
Great.
So I'm sorry, Emily.
No, you go.
Okay, what I got from that response, Kim, was that the district is thinking and considering about how to communicate this more widely.
Correct, and that schools are aware that these policies and procedures exist and protocols exist. And the administration wants to take a look about how we can firm them up and make them more widely known, or reaffirm them in our own way, or recommunicate them in our own way, and making sure that the protocols are up to date with our current management structure.
That sounds good.
Okay, so yeah, similar to the I think like the student protest policy, like I'm just trying to figure out what I'm hearing. Sorry, so like a lot of big words. I'm just trying to figure out like since we're posted on our website, I'll follow up to ensure these other website moving forward. So I think the resolution is posted on the website, Ms. Vaughn, to your point.
I found it.
Yeah,
It's
there's
not
it's the overview. The overview that's written out in text does not say the exact same thing as the resolution itself. I think those two things differ, like from the just like human eye. But yeah,
I
those are
think
my
the
thoughts.
copy of the exact resolution needs to go up there so that they can see it. And if the district is going to do something procedurally to be able to assist schools and other departments, then they would, report what they're going to be doing to us so that we'll be aware of what's going on. But I don't see that there's something more that we can do right now until we'd have to get Dr. Berry on they may have already started something too. I don't know. Because it has been a major community concern right now. And that we've had even some alerts that have gone through with it. There were false concerns at the time, but we didn't know that, even in our SLPS community. So,
Yeah.
and because I have opportunity to work in the surrounding areas, in my own travels right now, everyone's concerned about that. So,
okay, so I guess we don't actually need a motion or anything because
no.
SLPS is at work. And the copy is on the website. There are other languages files, but none of them are like facing out. You have to click the link to get to them.
And I can certainly bring it back to the cabinet that the board is looking for an update, and we should be able to provide that by certainly the next governance committee.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. Then the next item is commitment to transparency. We have all as a board together committed to transparency, especially in light of past recent history. And I would like to know, and maybe this is a future closed session item, Ms. Dutch. I don't remember if we've gone into closed session in the governance committee before. So So that's something we can absolutely do and have the discussion there if it's the right place. Just stop me when you need to. I don't think we've defined transparency in a particular way, or like what transparency means. Like obviously we can't share student information. That would not be transparent. I mean, that would be violations of things. But there, you know, from the district perspective, what does transparency look like? From the community perspective, what do they expect from transparency? And I just kind of wanted to have a discussion on that and how we are still, as of this moment, not regarded as transparent. And I would just love y'all's thoughts on the issue. Because I know I would not be a good director of communications, because I would just be like, we can't say these things, but you can have everything else.
So what I'm hearing is that the board is concerned, or at least board member Hubbard is concerned about a nebulous commitment to transparency without memorializing it in some way. And I think that, again, not in a legal advice sense, because I'm not giving legal advice, but what I can tell you is that other districts typically would handle a commitment in this way through policy, through a media relations policy or a public relations policy of some sort. And of course, if the board has an appetite to consider looking at those policies or seeing if any of our existing policies are that, but not in name, or have a place for that, where we can augment our commitment to the community and to being open with the community, we can certainly take a look at that and make a recommendation or propose a proposal for the board at the next governance committee hearing about how we can do that formally in policy and or procedure. If that is something that you are interested in, we can certainly, I can bring that back to cabinet and we can propose something.
That sounds great to me. Does that work for you, AJ?
Yeah, I think that's great.
And Dr. Collins? Adams?
I'm sorry, I'm good.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, great.
And I do think, oh, sorry, I do want to add, like, if it is there and it is sufficient enough, and like we can definitely send this through like asynchronously over email instead of having an entire governance like section committee or committee section about it. But I think if it's not sufficient,
Of course, we're going to comply with the sunshine laws about how to deliberate on this. And I would definitely think that the public can benefit from knowing if that policy exists and if the current position in that policy reflects the district's current commitment
yeah.
Sufficiently. So I think it would be really great for the administration to come with an update next time, regardless, whether or not we propose a change in policy or a new policy. I really haven't reviewed all of the policies enough and gotten other stakeholders' input on this, but point well taken that if the wheel is not broke, it doesn't need to be fixed, and maybe it's just communications and commitments renewed that are already in our policies. But we will bring you the full menu of options, hopefully full menu of options for the public and for the board's consideration next governance meeting.
Thank you. I feel like I've just put a lot of work on your shoulders. And I'm kind of sorry, but also it's work that we need. So thank you.
And something for consideration, you know, in the board's own development of their norms and perhaps some of the other policies that are in the board section is consideration of a more regular cadence of policy review. And I know that other districts, and something that you could consider is doing a policy review cycle where certain connected policies are reviewed, you know, whether it's every quarter, whether it's every half, and that there is a structured and predictable cadence and timeline to when these things will be brought before the board and also engage stakeholder input. I'm happy to point you to resources, but looking at some of the other big districts, you can see information about the policy cycles of the School District of Philadelphia, Chicago Public Schools, to name a few.
Okay. Yes, I think we had started a cadence and I am not sure what happened, but we can certainly start it again. And I'm sure you know that many of our policies are still from 1999, so it hasn't been done at all for a long time. So that's definitely one of the tasks of the board that needs to go forward. Not with as soon as possible. I mean, as soon as possible, but without scaring people. Okay, well, that was the last thing on my agenda. So if there are no further comments or conversation, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn our governance committee meeting at 4:39 PM.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
We are adjourned at 4:39 PM.